Up here, what is that?
Hard palate.
Hard palate, right? And behind that would be the soft palate. And if we lift it up where this incision is, the space underneath of there would be our nasopharynx, okay? Oropharynx is here. They really don't have the laryngopharynx just because the way their head is elongated like this. It kind of makes that a little different. But up in this space, let's see if I can make it work on here. Well, anyway, in this space, there's like two slits. And those slits are the openings to the auditory tubes. So those are what allows for the air to equilibrate on the two sides of the eardrum. So you know how when you have a cold sometimes and your ears feel plugged and you swallow and seem to like do a lot of clicking and suddenly it feels better, is because that clickety clack is the opening and closing of that tube. It doesn't stay normally open. It only opens when you swallow. One of the reasons why on air flights they give you something to drink or to snack on and make you swallow to equilibrate that pressure, okay? All right, so those are the main things. Well, no, actually there is one more thing, but these people seem to have crucified it. There should have been a little scoop sitting here, and that scoop that should have been right here. That would have been the epiglottis. So you should have, and there's a little remnant of it. You know, like that, you see what it would look like, but there's part of it missing. And so that's that cover that's going to cover up your lower respiratory tract when you swallow so you don't aspirate, okay? For us, we actually have on our soft palate, that uvula, the dangler, that does the same thing for the upper respiratory tract. So when you swallow, that kicks back so you don't get that backwash into your nasal passage. That's why sometimes when you're laughing or talking, you have food in your mouth and it goes up there. Your body doesn't know whether it's supposed to be swallowing or talking or breathing, what have you. All right, so from there, come down here, and right here is my what? What is this cartilaginous structure here? What is that organ there? Same as this. What is that? What's my Adam's apple? It's your larynx. Okay? So this is the larynx right here. That white is the cartilage. It's actually hyaline cartilage. And this large flat piece here in the front, that would actually be the thyroid cartilage of the larynx. So, you know, depending on what the question said, you know, you may say larynx or you might be saying thyroid cartilage. Now the cricoid cartilage is actually just below it. You see this little ridge right there? That's the cricoid. And that would kind of increase in size as it goes to the back. And it also kind of creates a hinge between that and then our trachea. And the trachea has this ribbing. Those are the cartilaginous rings, and those rings are what helps two things. Helps keep that tube from collapsing because we're moving air and air is compressible. So we need to have something rigid so it never collapses because sometimes it can be hard to open. And also the reason it's not like one solid piece of cartilage is those rings allow us to be flexible without causing a kink. So I can turn my head, I can bend, and I'm not gonna have a problem with it, okay? That's what that ribbing does for us. So behind that, there's another tube, right back here. And that tube, that would be the esophagus. And that one's going to pass down through the diaphragm and enter into the stomach. Now, a couple other things up here. That's it. Right below the larynx, there should have been like a little kind of beam structure. I'm kind of trying to force it into place. It got sliced a little bit. That would actually be the thyroid gland, okay? On your torso models, thyroid gland is the thing that sits below the larynx. So that kind of glandular structure. as we head posterior, we're gonna find that there's some tissue here that actually is sitting on the heart. It would have been on the pericardium, and that's gonna be part of the thymus. So the thymus, there's two pieces of it. They go on either side like this, and then it meets up and has like the body of it right on top of the pericardium. And the thymus is for the maturation, development of T cells. When we become adults, that shrivels up. Since this is a fetus, it has it. That's the reason on those models it's not there, because it's, implication is an adult. So when we go beyond that, then we have the lungs. And these are my lobes, okay? So, actually, one of the lobes on the right side actually wraps around the esophagus, okay? So, we have 4 and 3 lobes, right? So we have an interior one, we have a middle one, we have posterior, and then we have this little one that wraps around, is called the accessory. The pig has that. Both sides of ours is -1 lobe, okay? So on this, on the left side, you have 3 lobes. Posterior, middle, or anterior, middle, and posterior. And for us, we'd be using the words superior, inferior instead, in the placement of those. So there's just a superior and inferior on the left side for us. On the right side, there's going to be a middle that goes with it. All right. So beyond my heart, this is a better place to be able to see the esophagus. There's actually 3 blood vessels, or 3 tubes in here that you could actually see, and I always think this is kind of cool. 3 tubes, the one down there, that's the aorta, so that's that descending aorta. This thing right here is going to be the esophagus, and the thing up here is going to be my inferior vena cava, okay? So all those things are gonna pass now through this muscular sheath here, just this little skinny sheath, that's the diaphragm, okay? See the underside of it, see it's kind of whitish because that would have on it the parietal peritoneum, right? Going into the abdominal cavity, here's the liver. We're really not going to identify any lobes on the pig. You're going to spend the time knowing the lobes on the human examples, okay? But we do want to still find the gallbladder. And so the gallbladder, try to adjust this. So this teardrop structure, that's the gallbladder. And the tube extending from it is the cystic duct. Gallbladder is a cyst, it's a fluid-filled sac. And then we would see that technically, now this one is not as easy for me to shoot. Right here. So there's branches that go up into these lobes. Those would be the hepatic ducts. And then we have a common one that enters right here into the small intestine. And that right down there would be my common bile duct, okay? So the next organs that we have in this vicinity, stomach. Stomach's right here. We can see, maybe we can see, give me a second. There would be the esophagus entering into the stomach. And the regions of the stomach on the pig I won't worry as much about. Again, the human model more so. But right where the esophagus joins it at the lower the geosphincter. That area would be the cardia or cardium. You see how there's kind of a rounded edge right there? That's the part that we call the fundus. And the majority of the space we see here would be the body. When we get to the tail end here, that would be the pyloric canal. And then the big knot there, that's that pyloric sphincter that's regulating how quickly the foodstuff empties into the small intestine. All right? Next thing in here to point to is this lovely structure. I think it actually kind of looks like a leech. If you've ever seen a leech, it kind of looks like that, doesn't it? That's your spleen. Okay, that's going to be the largest of your lymphatic organs, unique compared to all the other ones because it's dealing with cleaning, filtering blood, where all the other ones are filtering, cleaning lymph. Now, underneath my stomach, there's going to be a gland that's going to have kind of the design with kind of these little granule nodules right down here. Right there. Do any of you know what that is? I'll give you a hint. Insulin.
Pancreas.
What is it?
Pancreas.
It's the pancreas, right? So that's the pancreas on this piggy. And it usually runs right along the underside of the stomach, and sometimes it bends kind of around along the duodenum as well. At the site of the duodenum, a lot of times we'll see that there's actually a blood vessel in here that we can, let me see if I can find it. This one got kind of ripped. But there's a blood vessel right there that's heading into that mess where my gallbladder ducts are. That would have been the hepatic portal. So that's drawing all of that nutrients from my digestive system, sending it, all but the big fats, sending it to the liver to be processed. Okay. My duodenum, we're just going to refer to the duodenum as being this first little stretch right here, and then it curves right there. So from there, and the majority of this mass or mess, however you want to say it, we're going to consider that to be the jejunum. Okay. Where we're going to identify it as the ileum is going to be in proximity to my large intestine, because the ileum joins the large intestine. So on this one, that site where they join is right here. So right here is where it's entering into my large intestine. So that's going to be my ileum. This would be the ileocecal valve. And then this closed end region, that's going to be the cecum. Again, it kind of looks like a finger going like this. Come here. See? Come. So that's the cecum. This is going to be your spiral colon. Okay? So that's basically the large intestine. And then it's going to extend down, and it's going to become the descending, and then it becomes the rectum as it enters down here. So if you get a pin somewhere in here, just, if you call it the rectum, probably going to be counted right. We refer to it as the descending colon, probably going to call it right, okay? But there is no transverse in here. So just realize that there's no sigmoid in there. So forget those, we just have spiral. I was telling you about the mesentery. So if I take all of this intestinal mess and if I spread it out, you can see all of this tissue in here, kind of fans out. That's the mesentery. Mesentery, the one thing that mesentery is different from the other two serosal layers is it's actually a double layer, because what it does, you have your tubing that it's going to envelop. So it comes down, envelops, and comes back together. So you actually have two layers to it. And that's one of the things that gives it the strength to help it to hang the organs. But yeah, that's what that is in there when you see all this funky looking stuff. In fact, here, I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but you can actually see some of the blood vessels. They're extending up to the intestine. All right, next thing, it's gonna be something that we're gonna be looking at in more detail. Kidneys, one on both sides. Common commonly we will have students, when they first look at these, they'll think it's a tumor. It's like, that's not a tumor. Kidneys can get tumors, that's not a good thing, but that's not a tumor. Coming from it is going to be the ureter. That's going to be another thing that we will be identifying with the urinary system, is a tube that's going to send the newly formed urine from the kidney to the site of storage, which will be the urinary bladder. Again, there is one on both sides. That one, and there's one right here, and they run down through here. And they're going to run to the urinary bladder. The urinary bladder is its tube-like structure that sits right here on the underside of this flap of skin that has the umbilicus, the umbilical cord. All right? So that's my urinary bladder right there. And by the way, when you talk about the gallbladder, first of all, that's one word, it's not two. When you write down bladder on here, you've got to be complete in describing it. So in other words, if you just put bladder down for the urinary bladder, I'm going to consider it wrong. Urinary bladder is what you need to put down. Okay. On the two sides, it's kind of deceiving because here's my ureter, and it looks like it's coming up and then going along the side here. It's not. These are actually the umbilical arteries. There's one on either side that enters into the umbilical cord. Honestly, the ureters, they enter in right where I have the probe. Right there, it enters in, going into it right there. Okay? If I was to travel further down with this, as I enter down into the space, that's the area that you could refer to it as the urethra down there. Okay? What else? Oh, this cutoff tube here, that's the umbilical vein. That's how the oxygenated blood, the nutrients from the mother, the placenta, gets to the fetus. And that's going to run through the liver and then into the inferior vena cava. And there should be, notice here, there it is. There, let me get my big hands out of there. There you go. So that tube there, that was attached